Welcome to the Garden Talk podcast, where we interview growers from all over the world, both beginners and experts, seeking to learn more about what they know about gardening and how they do things in their garden. Hey, what's up everybody? For those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and you're tuned into the Garden Talk podcast. This is episode number 134. In this episode, I interview Mama Kush 420. She has been gardening for 6 years and is big into training plants in order to achieve a higher quality and yield. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. She talks about the pros and cons of training plants, details on how she does several different plant training methods, and gives some good overall advice for beginners. These podcast episodes are cut up into short clips and posted on the Garden Talk Clips YouTube channel. I also have a channel where I show the plants that I grow. I'll link both of those channels down in the YouTube description section below. One of my goals for this podcast is to bring free information about gardening to the general public. That being said, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's episode who helped make that goal possible. Thanks to AC Infinity for sponsoring this episode. Check out their Cloud Ray Gen 2 oscillating clip fan. Their next-gen clip fan has been re-engineered to provide a long-lasting motor and customizable airflow for all stages of your plant's growth cycle. It features 10 speeds and 10 dynamic wind modes to simulate outdoor airflow and links with UIS controllers for Wi-Fi app control. Click the link in the description section below so you can learn more about their Cloud Ray clip fans, and the discount code MrGrowIt15 works on both Amazon and their website, acinfinity.com. Stash Blend. Stash Blend is a 2-1-5 plant additive that can be used with synthetic bottled nutrients or in living soil systems. Simply mix half teaspoon of Stash Blend into a gallon of water, then water your plants with it. Ingredients include corn steep liquor, seaweed extract, humic acid, beneficial bacteria, silica, and mycorrhizal fungi. Check it out at stashblend.com, link in the description section below, and use the discount code THESTASH. Mars Hydro. Check out their updated FC and FCE series of LED grow lights. They have grow lights for several different size grow spaces, and all grow lights in those series now have the Samsung LM301H diodes. You also notice a new foldable design with their larger fixtures. There is an optional smart control function where you can plug in the iConnect smart controller and control the grow lights through their app. Go to their website, mars-hydro.com, for more details, and you can use the discount code MrGrowIt to save on any of their products. And we're back, and I'm joined with Mama Kush. How you doing today?
Oh, fabulous. Thank you so much for having me. This is amazing.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm excited to have you on today to talk all about plant training. And a hot topic, a lot of people do plant training. There are several different ways to go about it, several different styles of plant training. And we're going to get into the different styles in this episode and find out how you go about plant training. So really excited for this. But first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into gardening?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks again for having me. My name is Mama Kush 420, Mama Kush. I am part of the Home Grow community crew over on YouTube and Instagram. And I've been growing plants for about 6 years now. I don't have a green thumb at all. Everything that I do, I have diligently learned from the YouTube gurus, such as Chris here. So this is something that I never thought I would be able to do, but with hard work and dedication, I've learned how to grow, and I've learned how much joy that these plants can give to you.
Awesome. And what would you say your grow style is? Are you indoors, outdoors? Are you in soil, cocoa, hydro? Are you synthetic, organic? What's your style?
Well, I'm doing a little bit of everything right now, actually. It's really fun right now in the garden. So I am mainly indoors, but I am from Canada, and we are allowed 4 recreational plants. So those are my outdoor girls. So I have my medical garden indoors, and then my Freedom 4, as we like to call it here. Those are my outdoors. So I've just recently put them out in the May long weekend is when it's safe for us to put them outside. And I am mainly an organic grower, but currently I am using an ebb and flow system that I am loving it. And I'm dipping my toes into that little bit of I call it like a baby hydro. It's like hydro, but not really hydro, because it's just, it just soaks and and drains, soaks and drains. So it's like, to me, it's not like I'm a chemist. So I'm really excited about that, and that's the first time running synthetic nutrients as well. So that's been a big learning curve for me. So right now, a little bit of both, but mainly indoor and organic.
Awesome. And for the record, that is a real background I had asked her before we hit the record button.
Yes,
Unbelievable.
it is.
Beautiful, beautiful background. I am so jealous of that.
Thank you. Actually, my outdoor girls are going to be watered with lake water all summer. So I'm just going to go down the stairs to the beach and grab a scoop of lake water and get all the good microbes from the natural lake. And that's what my outdoor girls are being fed this year.
That's so cool. And for those listening in on podcast platforms who can't see this, she's right on a lake, and there's a bunch of greenery there. And I know you're from Canada, and it's just, I'm just jealous. That's all I got to say about that one. It's beautiful. It really is.
Thank you. It is definitely our little piece of heaven here.
So let's get into plant training. I figured we'd start with kind of the basics. What are the benefits of training plants?
I feel the benefits are, one, it's so fun. Oh my goodness, that's like the main benefit right there. It's just so fun to play with the plants. But it adds structure to each of the branches. So later on, they can hold up their own weight. And the more girthier the branch, the easier it will be later on in flower to hold up its own weight. I don't like putting trellis nets and that sort of stuff over my colas. It's just too fussy, and it makes me mad. I just get frustrated. So I like to train them early and get them nice and strong so they can hold up their weight later on.
Awesome. Yeah, there are definitely some really good benefits to training plants. One of the things that I particularly like is that it helps with the distribution of light in a sense, right? Because if you are in a grow tent, for example, and you just letting the plants grow naturally, Christmas tree style, you typically have that one cola that just kind of comes up and dominates. Well, those lower branches aren't going to receive as much light, right? And so I know it's genetic dependent and stuff like that, but you could see kind of lower quality on the lower buds. But, a lot of genetics these days, it ends up being just fine. But if you're training and you're training the plants, you're manipulating the plants so they are even canopy across the entire grow space, well, then you've got that light shining down. And there have actually been some studies where you can get a higher yield from training versus not training. So I think that's another reason why a lot of people do it. But there are always downsides to things as well, right? What are the downsides to plant training?
Oh, breaking a branch. There's nothing worse than just being a little too rough with that and breaking a branch. And, I'm such a good Canadian. I was, sorry, my little girls, I always feel so bad. And I run out and get my painter's tape and I try to save them as much as I can. And, but if you can't save it, you've always got yourself a nice clone. If you're not running an auto flower, if you're running a proper girl, that you could just clone her, and so there's really no downsides other than you might get an extra clone out of it.
I would say one downside. I've got one in mind, which is that it's a little bit more work, right? You getting in there, spending the time to do whatever type of training you decide to do. We're going to go over the different training types here in this episode, but anything from just tying the branches down to high stress train techniques where you're topping the plant, actually removing some things. It takes a little bit of time, right? Now, that's not to say that the reward isn't going to be better, because it certainly can be. So yeah, that's the only thing I can really think of as far as like a downside to plant training.
Yeah, see, I don't consider that being a downside, because that's time I get to spend with my girls. That's part of the fun part, right? Like that's just, I get to tune out the world, and I'm just in tune with my girls in the tent and taking care of business in there. So yeah, that's probably why that didn't come to me. I don't think of that as a downside. So that's one of the perks.
Great point. Yeah, I know there are a lot of people who are they monitor the amount of time they're in there, and they try to reduce the time that they're in there. A lot of people have real automated systems now to where they don't only have to check in their plants once a day, if that, and they're in there for a very short period of time. So yeah, there are some people who really just try to limit the time in their garden so they can do other things, Or there are people that really love the garden and they want to spend more time in there. So it really depends on how you are as a person.
Exactly. And training's not necessary. So if you don't have the time to get in there, that's fine. If you do, it's wonderful and so rewarding.
Great point. Yeah, it is a completely optional to do all this stuff. You can let the plant grow naturally, Christmas tree style, whatever, and get to a harvest. I know that's back when I first started growing, I didn't want to do any training. I was afraid to top the plant because I just oh no, I want this to be successful. I don't want to destroy the plant, right? So I've had several grows where I just let the plants grow naturally. But, as you get more comfortable growing and more confident, you tend to manipulate the plant a little bit more and more and see what they can take. And you can be really rough with them for sure.
I find even just one good training session, if you don't have a lot of time, if you're just about to flip, maybe the week before a flip, just give it one good training session. And that's wonderful as well. You don't have to be in there every day, moving this leaf and moving that leaf. You can go in and just give her one good training session and you'll still see benefits.
Completely agree. Yeah, you can definitely go about it that way. You can definitely be very efficient when it comes to training as well by kind of planning and stuff and knowing exactly what you're going to do and stuff like that. So when do you start training plants and when do you stop training plants?
So I like to start actually quite young. As soon as I see that the true leaves have come in and they've got a little bit of meat on their bones, let's say, they're not the baby seedlings. You can tell that they're starting to grow. Then I like to just bend them over just slightly, just enough to give them a little crooked, and then they bounce back from that. And then the next day I'll come in and I'll bend them the other way, the other direction, and then they'll bounce back. And then once I start seeing a couple of nodes starting to show up, then I'll get a little bit more dramatic. And I even start when they're seedlings. I'll just go in and take my tip of my finger and just give them a little flick sometimes, just to kind of wake them up and stimulate them and let them know, hey, come on, it's time to get going here. We got some growing to do.
Train early, train often. That's a motto that a lot of people go by. I think I usually wait until the third node. Then I'm doing something, I'm either doing a bend or I am doing a topping. But yeah, as far as the bending and just manipulating it that way, that's really low stress training. Is there any other type of low stress training you do? Are you tying, when the plants get bigger, are you tying branches down to the side of the grow pot or anything? Or how do you go about low stress training throughout the grow cycle?
So once the girls have say reached about the third node, that's when I start getting a little bit more aggressive. So I will start bending them over a little bit more dramatically. And then once I see that they're bouncing back fairly quickly, I'll actually start introducing bud clips into the mix. So as soon as the stalk is sturdy enough that I can bend the top over and it can take the weight of the bud clips, they get it right from the get-go. So then I'll bend them over, so they'll now be at a certain angle, and the top will raise up. Then as they grow out, I will add an additional bud clip until they reach the edge of the pot. And this is something I've added into my garden over the last couple of years, and I'll never turn back. I used to use paper clips and garden ties and all sorts of things. This has made it so simple, these clips, and the weight of the clips actually helps stimulate the growth of the plant as well, because there's something heavy when they're small, of course, when they're small. But as they get stronger and they get more vigorous, you can add more. And it's just so much fun to add all these clips in. And then when they've grown into them, and you almost make like a staircase with your branches. And so you start from the center and you make these staircases all the way out to the edge of your pots. And when you remove the clips, it is the most amazing sight to see those legs once they're all cleaned up, to have those, I call it like the staircase to heaven. I just love it.
That's so cool. You know, I actually haven't used any of those particular style of clips. I see a lot of people using them. I've always wondered how well they actually helped train the plants. How many are you actually using per run?
It really depends on the cultivar, but at least probably about 5 or 6 at the minimum. Because what I like to do is spread it out from the center and spread it out. And these clips are in such a wonderful angle that they don't stress the plant out. They don't over hyperextend it, I guess the word would be. So they are like ergonomically correct. But you can add as many or as little as you want. If you just want to bend the top over and not have to go in and fuss and muss with the rest of the plant, you can just do the one. I like to add lots and just get those girls as spread out as I possibly can. And then eventually they stay there. You only need to have those clips on for a week or so. And then the plant has been trained to go in that direction. Then you can move them around and you can play with the different branches and really maximize your canopy.
I was going to ask, if you leave the clips on, does the branch end up like growing into the clips and kind of gets stuck, or what?
Actually, that's the beauty of these clips. So we forget, you forget these things inside the plant. They are actually meant to break before they hurt your plant. So if you put it on the stalk and you put it down at the bottom and you completely forget, they will actually, it's a safety mechanism. They will break before they hurt your plant. Now, your plant is very adept to growing around things, and sometimes you'll see that the stalk is like growing and melding into it, and it's now become part of the plant, but it will never hurt your plant because they will break, they will snap in half. Now, I've never had that happen. That's my goal. I want to get this thing so big that I want them snapping. I want to test this. Haven't had it happen yet, but they are very safe, and that is a wonderful safety mechanism in them. And they are very well thought out. It's a very well thought out product.
For those just listening, she was holding up the Bud Clips by Bud Trainer. So I'm familiar with that brand. I'm thinking about picking them up. I'm looking at it on Amazon right now, $20 for a 20 pack. So not too bad. I mean, you reuse them over and over again, as long as they don't break, like you mentioned. But you reuse them over and over again per grow. So I think I might pick some up and try it out.
And you can actually throw them in the dishwasher as well. I have, from when my children were small, I have a small basket that we used to use for their bottles. And I just put them all in the basket and run it through my dishwasher. And then they're clean and sanitized and ready to go for the next time. So don't ever throw those little baskets away, because they're wonderful.
Easy to clean. I like it.
Yep.
Have you ever heard of the no technique plant training?
No, this is just fascinating. Please.
I heard about this, and I've talked about it on a podcast before. I actually had, I think it was Pigeons 420 had on a podcast, and we talked about plant training because he's big into it. And I don't think he knew what it was either, but if you search on Google, you'll find no technique plant training, which is basically all it is just one bend. So you're letting the plant grow to a certain point, bending it down 90 degrees, and then that's it. You're not doing any other training beyond that. And the thought is that the other branches that come up, you're going to have a whole bunch of branches kind of coming up, and that they should be even. But it's an easy way to do training if you're kind of looking to ease your way into it, right? You don't want to do a whole bunch of different things. You just want to try one thing. No technique plant training. You might want to try that. So I figured I'd mention it.
Oh, that's the Bud Clips would be perfect for that. You put one clip in and you're done.
There we go. You don't even need the 20 pack. You just need one. How about leaf tucking? That's another sort of training that people do throughout the grow, really, is tucking leaves down, and that allows light to get down into the canopy more. Do you do any leaf tucking at all? If so, at what point in the grow do you usually do it?
I like to do leaf tucking actually during flower. So when I prep the girls to go into flower, they get a good defoliation. I clean everything up. But then as those leaves come back within the next 3 weeks during that burst of growth, I will tuck leaves because those are the solar panels. You don't want to strip all of the leaves. So I will tuck them to make sure that the flower sites are exposed.
Okay, yeah, that's typically when I'm doing it as well. Although I have found value in doing it in veg sometimes. Like after I topped a plant and I've got those two branches kind of growing up, those two top branches, I've actually used leaves to kind of that are underneath the branches directly, bring them up over the branch and kind of tuck it so the whole branch is kind of being tucked down with that petiole from the leaf below it. Don't know if everybody caught that visual, if everybody was able to visually understand what I was talking about there, but that's, I think, the easiest way I kind of explain it. That's been helpful, particularly trying to get some of the lower branches to grow up. So after a topping's done, keeping those top branches manageable and allowing the lowers to catch up. Other than that, yeah, flowering as well, as we're just in flowering, just kind of tucking leaves down underneath bud sites and stuff and trying to get light down into the canopy. So it's helpful. So we mentioned topping a couple times, and really that's just cutting off the top of the plant or the top of a branch of the plant. You can do it several different ways. I usually start either the third, fourth, or fifth node. I'll do my first topping, and then it helps the lower branches kind of grow up. Oftentimes, I do a second top as well. The branches that come out from the first topping, top those again, and then it helps them more. And you can continue to do that. I've topped, to where I had 32 different colas kind of coming up, and in my opinion, that was a little bit of an overkill. I don't think I'll ever do that much, growing indoors in particular. I like to stick at 8 or 16 tops is my personal preference. Do you do topping at all? If so, when do you usually do topping?
I have topped in the past. I've leaned more into the low stress training now, as opposed to topping, but I'm not opposed to it at all. Sometimes I will be low stress training and then, oops, there goes the top. So I guess we've topped it. It happens. But I don't focus on the topping as much as the low stress training. I just found that the results were almost better without the high stress early on.
Got it. Yeah, and it's so debatable. Some people are like, oh, well, if you're topping, you're doing high stress and you're slowing the growth of the plant. Kind of debatable to how much it's actually slowing down. And yeah, you could totally get away with just doing the low stress training without doing any topping throughout the whole grow. So a lot of people do it that way. And at that point, you're not really slowing down the plant growth at all, huh? So I take it, since you haven't really played around with topping much, FIMing is another thing you probably don't have much experience with, or what?
I have done it. When I was learning, I tried everything, and that's what you do when you're learning. You try a little bit of everything to see what's your style and how you would like to have your garden run. But I have tried FIMing before, and I don't know, the leaves weren't pretty. It didn't look nice. It looked messy to me, and I didn't like it, and I didn't really see much more of a benefit. I would rather top than FIM, just for aesthetic reasons only.
I hear you. Yeah, I've done it accidentally numerous times, countless number of times, and really, for those folks that aren't too familiar with what FIMing is, really it's kind of like a topping, but you top at the wrong spot. You top a little bit too high, and instead of it splitting it into 2 branches, it can go into 3, it can go into 4, so you can go more than just the 2. And I've had multiple times where I just got 3 branches out of it, which I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I thought it was always going to be 4. Nope, it can actually just split out into 3 different branches. And the story behind it is actually wrong in a sense, to where a lot of people say that the story behind FIMing is that some guy tried to top and he missed, and he's like, F, I missed. Insert the swear word there, but F, I missed. And then so that's where FIM came from. But I actually recently learned from Kyle Cushman that he had mentioned in the podcast episode I did with him that actually isn't the case. It was really somebody who submitted a question into High Times, and they signed their name FIM. And so, it's kind of funny to see how that story was just randomly created, and now that's not actually it. But Yeah, he would tell more details on it if you guys want to warp back to the episode I did with him. There's timestamps on every episode, so you should be able to click right into when we talk about FIMing, and you can hear the story behind it. Because I definitely didn't say it properly. I probably butchered it a little bit, but for the most part, yeah, apparently somebody signed the name FIM. It wasn't actually F. I missed.
Wow. That's how these urban legends are created, like the whole myth about how 420 was created. And there's so many different, versions of the story. I'm sure we've heard them all, so, I mean, how do you know which one's right?
You don't, right? You just gotta assume. Let's move on to super cropping. So is that something you do at all or no?
Oh, yes. I love my super cropping. That you're talking about Kyle Cushman. I do the Cushman chiropractic. It is something that snap, that pop that you hear. It brings me so much joy. Yeah, so I like to super crop as soon as I like to do it right before I'm about ready to go into flower, maybe about a week or so, when the plant has the structure and is ready. I'm like, okay, I know you're ready to go. I'll get in there and I'll start from the very bottom, and I'll pinch the branch with one hand on each side, and I'll give it a little twist. So it's like he says it's like the chiropractic, like you're popping the spine, and I'll do that to each and every branch, and I'll start right at the very bottom, and I'll go all the way right up to the very tippy top. And the only caveat I would suggest is don't water right before you're about to do that, because you can snap off a branch a little bit easier if there's a lot of water inside your plants. If they just had a nice big drink and you give it a pop. The pop is a little bit more satisfying, but you run the risk of breaking a branch a little bit more.
Somebody's got to do like an ASMR video with just the cracks that are happening from the super cropping. That'd be funny.
Oh my goodness. If you've never experienced it before, just do yourself one favor and just do that one little twist, one hand on each side of the branch, and just give it a little twist. Not much, just enough to hear that pop. And so satisfying.
So you only doing like a pop? Is it still like the branch still kind of staying up straight, or are you like manipulating enough to where it's flopping over?
At this point, I've done all of my training to where my plant is exactly where I want it to be. So I don't usually do a super crop to the point where I'm flopping the branches over unless I need to. But usually all of my training is done free going into this stage. So the plant is a beautiful globe shape, and I'm just popping those branches to make sure that she's got those knuckles to be able to hold up the weight later on.
That's exactly what I heard from other people. I think it was Pigeons 420 who mentioned he does the same exact thing, to where every single branch, in order to try to strengthen up the branches, so that way when they're flowering, they're able to hold up those big fat buds a lot easier than if you didn't do it. So it's something that I haven't done on every single branch before. Maybe one grow I will do just for fun. Maybe it's content, right? I use super cropping a little bit differently, and that's really only in flower. I use it just in the first 3 weeks of stretch, right? So the plant is still stretching upward. Now, if I'm not able to do low stress training, because I'm still trying to maintain that even canopy, and so those first 3 weeks of flower when the light cycles change, plants are still stretching, the heights are changing, right, for each of the branches. So if I can't bend them all down and keep them even, well, sometimes those center branches, those are ones I can't really just pull down with the low stress train. So what I'll do is I'll do a super crop, let those branches flop over, and then the outer branches really will continue to grow up, and then it will kind of be even. The goal is really to have it even by the end of the stretch phase. So that's really the only way I use super cropping myself.
And that's the goal out of all of this training, is to get that even canopy, to get the maximum light available and the maximum we can from the plants.
Yeah, and it could be so helpful for sure. Let's move on to lollipopping. Now, lollipopping is categorized into the training area, right? People say, oh, well, it's actually pruning. It's a pruning technique. It's not a training technique. Well, okay, let's just include in the conversation, whatever way you think about it. Let's include it and let's talk about lollipopping. So, what is lollipopping and do you do it at all?
Oh, I love a clean leg. Oh, I love a clean leg. So lollipopping is taking the foliage from the bottom of the plant all the way up to the canopy, to where you would like your canopy to begin. And it's to help maximize the airflow inside. I always tease on our shows that I it's Friday night. Get your legs shaved, because that's another term for it, is shaving up the legs, shaving up the girls, to have that bottom area nice and clean. And there's you it helps with pests. It helps with airflow. So much. It's just a nice clean area.
And when do you typically do it?
Throughout the life, actually,
Yeah.
as much as I can, I will try and keep that center area as clean as possible. But right before flower, in that week or so, right before flower, is when I just strip those girls right up and give them a real good training session. And really, that's the key, is right before, about a week before flower, is to get all of this done, so then the plant has time to recover before it has to start focusing on creating those big, beautiful buds that we all want.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'll do it right before flipping the flower. Oftentimes, really, during stretch phase, the first 3 weeks, there still can be some growth down there. So I'm usually going in around, day 14 to 20, something like that, to where I'm doing another strip of the lowers. And it's not as much, right? I've done the bulk of the work before flipping the flower, but there is a little bit of cleanup that can still happen. And then as the plants continue on from there into flowering, you can get little buds that kind of form down on the lowers, and I'm usually plucking those off as well. And yeah, so I'm just like you. We're kind of doing a little bit throughout the whole cycle, really.
Yeah, I find it's just maintenance. If I'm in there and I'm seeing a spot that needs to be cleaned up, just take care of it now. It just saves you work later on, and then that energy is being focused to where we want it, to not where, when nobody wants to trim the larf, right? So, you get rid of it. Just get those big, beautiful flowers, and I mean, that's the goal. That's what we want.
Yeah, it definitely helps with the upper growth, that's for sure. And yeah, all the larf just ends up in my trim pile these days. I don't trim that anymore. I used to, but my standards have gotten a little bit higher since then. So ends up in my trim pile, or it could end up in a compost pile as well. So either or. Another thing that's kind of looped into a training category, but some people say, hey, no, it's pruning, is defoliation, right? What is defoliation, and when do you go about doing it?
Oh, defoliation is just getting rid of those big fan leaves that are covering up what you are trying to grow. You want to keep, like I said earlier, to try and keep a clean space and get that airflow. And if you have too many leaves on top of each other, you can get microclimates and climates, excuse me, and moisture, and then you're opening yourself up to problems at that point. So just to keep that airflow is to defoliate, to get rid of the leaves that are going to be a problem later on. I like to defoliate, again, that right before flower. That's I give them a really big stripping, but I'm actually doing it throughout the whole grow. I'm trying to prevent those microclimates from showing up, and I've never had an issue with powdery mildew, thank goodness. But that's something because I live at a lake. There's a lot of moisture in the air, and we have a lot of foliage. There's a lot of green in the air, so it's something I try to prevent as much as possible. And defoliating, keeping a clean airflow canopy is the way to do it.
I'm just like you. Yeah, late veg, really, before flipping the flower, I'm doing pretty heavy defoliation, and then I do that flip, and then within the first 3 weeks, that stretch period, foliage is still continuing to grow. So oftentimes I am plucking off leaves, looking to pluck them off day 7, 14, 21. Those are roughly the days where I typically am just looking at the plant saying, hey, is there anything that needs to be removed at this point? Try to make sure there's airflow going through the canopy, making sure if there's stagnant spots within the canopy, that's a a good area for pests to congregate, right? It's like,
Yeah. There's we don't leave room for those pests to party. There's
right?
no partying in our tents.
And then sometimes what I'll do is, and it's genetic dependent, right? Because some strains are going to be more bushier than others. So sometimes I'm at day like 45 in flower, and I'm like, you know what? I can pluck off some leaves at this point and get some light to come more down into the canopy to touch some of those bud sites there. So that's kind of how I personally go about defoliation. Pretty similar to you.
Yeah, I like to go from the top as well. A lot of people look from the bottom up. But sometimes if you just put your head over top of the canopy and just pretend you're like the light looking down and think, okay, where can I get some area? And it could just be 1 or 2 leaves. That's all you need. And you've just maximized your grow.
Yep, absolutely. How about the SCROG technique? Have you ever done that before?
I've tried, but it's so frustrating. I like to move my plants around and to be able to shift things around and to have things stuck in one spot. It's a little difficult for me. I have tried, but it's just not my thing. Nope, I can't do it.
Yeah, it can have its own unique challenges, that is for sure. For those folks that don't know what SCROG is, it's basically just putting a net into your grow space, flat across your grow space, and then training your plants within that net. And some people will weave branches in and out of the net. Others will just tuck under the net entirely, keep tucking all the way into flower. Some people stop doing the tucking at like day 7 of flower. Some people stop at day 14 of flower. So it's really subjective on when you stop tucking, but after that, you just get the upwards growth. And the idea is that you've filled up that net entirely, you're kind of maximizing the grow space, and you're resulting really in an even canopy. Yeah, it's something I've tried a couple times in the past. I'm not a yield guy anymore. You know, when I first started growing, sure, I was going for yield and measuring things out and trying to get higher and higher yield, but I'm just growing for myself now. I mean, I have friends and family that come into town, so I don't really need yield. I can just get what I'm looking for, just growing the plants with regular training, other types of training, I should say. And so it's something that I kind of shied away for, although there are definitely several good benefits. One of the main ones being is a higher yield doing these SCROG techniques. So yeah, there's a different way to go about it.
And that's the beauty, is each person, has their own way of gardening. I mean, Troy kills it. Northern Scrogger kills it with the SCROGs. That's his thing. That's, that's what works for him. And I'm sure he's tried other methods to find what works for him. So each person, that's why it's so wonderful that we have such an amazing community right now, that we can talk about all our different methods so you can find what works for you. And you can take a little piece from here and a little piece from there and build your own. It's just amazing that we have this platform.
Yeah, it's so beneficial to be able to see all the different ways to do it and kind of picking and choosing what you want to implement in your own garden. And a big shout out to Troy, Northern Scrogger. I mean, he is really, we can consider him an expert at this point at the SCROG technique. He literally has a show called SCROG School. And he's teaching people step by step on how to do the SCROG technique. So if anybody's interested in that and happen to not know who Troy is or Northern Scrogger, just search for him on YouTube. You'll come up with the SCROG School, and it's really, really detailed class on how to SCROG, and he has a really, really great result.
And even if you are not interested in SCROGing, he has a way of teaching about the plant that is just so captivating. It's, if you're not interested in SCROGing, even just learn from him about the plant. It's just bow down to Troy.
So yeah, SCROG technique, SCROG, stands for screen of green. There's also SOG, SOG, sea of green. Have you ever done that method before?
I have in the past, and that's a lot of fun. You just take a bunch of small plants and you fill up as much as the canopy as possible. You have to be careful with that one though, because sometimes, they start off little. You forget that they can double or triple in flower. So you have to make sure you leave enough room to groove in there. So I believe the rule of thumb is 50%. So you cover 50% in your veg plants, so then your floor space in veg plants. So then by the time that they grow and they bloom, they will be 100% in your canopy. And I find it's a lot of work. I like to grow big plants myself, but I have tried it before for fun, and you can get a lot of flavors in one small tent.
That's a method that I actually haven't tried out. Should put it on my bucket list to try out in the future, though. That's for sure. It's super interesting to me. I mean, it just seems like such a cool technique. Does seem like a lot of work if you're hand watering, but if you're doing like an ebb and flow system like you've got, I'm sure it makes things a lot easier. And I think you get the best result if you're doing it from clone, right? Because they're all kind of the same, coming from the same mother plant, and you should see similar growth across all the plants. Versus if you're growing from seed or even different cultivars, it could kind of make things uneven as far as your canopy. So oftentimes it's generally recommended to be from clone, all the same across the board. Another thing I wanted to ask about actually is lighting. Now, how does this relate to training? Well, some folks say that they reduce the amount of lighting when they're doing some of these training methods, whether it be high stress training or low stress training. They're reducing it a little bit because they want the plants to kind of recover from the training. Do you feel like the light output should be kind of lowered or changed at all while you're doing plant training?
I don't adjust my lighting for the training unless I can see if my girls are stressed and they are not bouncing back from the training. Then I will adjust the lighting and I'll give them a cloudy day. I'll lower that lighting and give them. But the sun doesn't stop shining because the wind is blowing, right? These girls have got to. If they're in my garden, they better stand up. So, if you're not strong, you're out. It's like Sparta in here. Yeah. So the only time I would adjust the lighting for training is if I saw I went too hard and they were not bouncing back. So then I will lower the lighting a little bit and give them a cloudy day, and until I see that they're get their footing again, and then bring them back up again.
Got it. Now, what about the temperature and humidity? Are you doing anything differently in the environments where you're training plants versus not training plants, or no?
No, I just keep everything. I have everything all dialed in. It just stays there. Once I have it dialed in, I don't like to fuss and muss with things because that's when problems happen. You'll adjust something and then do something else, and then you can't figure out what happened and where the problem arose. So I try and keep everything as simple as possible. And so everything just stays the same. I adjust the humidity and stuff for flower. And veg, that's the only 2 times I change.
What do you typically aim for temperature and humidity throughout the grow cycle?
During a veg, I like to keep it at about 75 to 80% humidity. I'm going to talk in Celsius because I am Canadian, so I don't know what the conversion is, but I like to keep it around 26 to 27 degrees in the tent. So not too hot, but a nice summer day. I like to keep it a nice summer day, nice balmy spring summer day. And then for flower, I keep the same temperature, and then I bring my humidity down to about 50%.
Got it. And doing the conversion here, you said 26, which is 78.8 degrees. And then 27 degrees Celsius is 80.6 degrees, according to Google conversion here. So for those that are in Fahrenheit. Awesome. So I'm trying to think, are there any other plant training methods that we didn't talk about that you'd like to discuss?
Well, I do like to do one thing to my girls that is not very typical, but I like to take a leaf blower to my girls, and I have an indoor leaf. Well, it's not an indoor; it's an outdoor leaf blower, but I have it indoors in my setup, and I take the leaf blower, and I actually have this part of my IPM It's part of my IPM and it's part training, both. I will take my leaf blower and I will blow the tent, and these girls are swaying and moving, and it's like a hurricane in the tent. And the girls always respond with a thank you. The next day, they are stronger, they are healthier, they are, praying to the light gods. But I'll do that, and then I'll spray with IPM. So if there's anything sitting on those leaves, they're getting blown right off, and then I'll fog the tent and zip it up, and then I never have a problem. It's so fun. You just see them swaying in the wind.
That's wild. At what age, how long has the plant been growing for?
Oh, yeah, they're usually in good veg. Like they are good 6 weeks in. They've got some good roots on them. They're strong. They're healthy. They've been able to take my abuse up until then, and then it's like, all right, let's see how far we can take you. And then and they always thank me. They just absolutely love it.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I wasn't sure if you were doing it for seedlings. It'd be blowing seedlings right out of the medium.
No. I'm aggressive. I'm not mean.
That's funny. I never heard of anybody doing that before. Do you have a video of that by chance? Maybe on your Instagram or something, or what?
I do actually on my Instagram. Yeah, I have that. I have it actually posted. I've got it pinned. Pinned is the word. Yeah, I've got it pinned to the top of my reels on Mama Kush 420 on Instagram.
All right, at Mama Kush 420 on Instagram. I'm gonna go on there and check out the pinned one. That's awesome. What advice do you have for beginners who are training their plants for the first time?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. These plants want to grow, and they have survived millennia before we showed up. So just don't be afraid. If you're concerned, start slow. Start slow. Just start with a slight bend and see how they respond. But really, these girls can take a lot. A leaf blower, for instance. Please don't be afraid. Just get started. And if you have questions, there's people out there that are willing to help you along the way. So please don't be afraid to ask questions or investigate, or just try. Just get your hands in there and try.
All right, good advice. So let's wrap things up here. Can you tell us how the listeners can find you and what you have upcoming in the future?
Oh, absolutely. So thank you. So Mama Kush 420 on Instagram is my main page. I have a backup page in case Instagram decides to take me down. So that's Mama Kush 2.0 is my backup account. I only have the one. So if anybody's trying to impersonate me, I only have the one backup account. You can reach me also at Home Grow the Community Official on Instagram. We do a weekly podcast on Wednesdays over on YouTube, Home Grow the Community. And on Friday nights, we do a special Grow Me Gardens, where we get to see the gardens of the community. They can come onto the show and ask questions and show their grow and come and hang out. We do a little campfire afterwards where we can just sit and hang out and just chat. So that's Home Grow the Community on YouTube. So we're all over the place.
Sweet. Well, I'll definitely have a link to Mama Kush's page down in the YouTube description section below. And if you're tuning in on one of the podcast platforms, just search for You'll Find Her. Mama Kush, thank you so much for coming on to the episode today to talk about plant training. It's been a fun conversation. And yeah, there are so many different ways to go about this process. You really just got to try things out and figure it out on your own. See how much your plants can take and take it slow, like she had mentioned. Anybody can really have success doing plant training as long as they give it a shot and be patient with it.
Thank you so much, Chris. This has been absolutely amazing. I'm tingling right now. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Okay, I'll let you go. And yeah, peace out, everyone. Catch you in the next episode.